This season at Kings Island, it will be 35 years since this attraction, an original attraction when Kings Island opened in 1972, gave its last rides. Hello, everybody. Alongside Ryan Sir, I'm Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Topics is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans, because that's who we are and that's who we care about. Don, I was just telling you before we started recording, I keep on telling myself that I rode Dare Spin Keggers, but I didn't. I rode the very similar Witch's Cauldron, which was located similarly in the park and was a similar type of ride. But we're not here to talk about that. Tell me about Dare Spin Keggers, since clearly I don't know anything about it.
Well, Ryan, it was the first ride that I ever rode at Kings Island in
Really?
1972 on my first visit. Yeah, it's because you came down International Street. We went down the left-hand side and, we turned and there it was. So it wasn't like, I picked that out and said, we got to ride this first. It was just the first thing we came to. A lot of fun. I ended up riding it 63 times. That attraction, in its years of operation at Kings Island from 72 to 1989, gave 10.7 million rides. But it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. The spending part of it, when you're younger, you can handle that a lot better than when you get older. But it was really cool, and to me, I'm always going to have a great memory of it because it was the first thing I ever did at the park.
Yeah, for me, it was Shake, Rattle, and Roll. I remember that as well. But this ride was crafted by Intamin. It was a spinning flat ride, and it added a unique twist to like the classic teacup experience because it had a tilting platform.
Yeah.
It featured 18 barrel-shaped tubes distributed among three rotating platforms on a spacious 39-foot diameter base.
Yep, and each of the ride vehicles they were sported kind of a distinctive theme resembling barrels with alcoholic beverages labels, on them, gin, rum, and then XXXX. So it had nice theming. It fit the Oktoberfest area of the park very well, and it was a ride that. Every time I went to ride it, I mean, there was, a decent wait time for it. It wasn't something you just walked up and got on.
Yeah, the vibrant aesthetics of the ride, it extended beyond the vehicles, with the original all red platform transforming over the first season to include yellow, blue, and green hues on the smaller turntables. So it was a multicolored ride. That's kind of cool because what year was that it,
Remember the flags?
yeah,
Remember the
yeah.
flags?
Yeah, colorful flags and pennants adorned the attraction and contributed to its festive atmosphere. Was it all red during the Brady Bunch episode? I think it was.
Yes. I
Okay.
don't want to say yes, it was Reddit during that episode. Um, but then they had a modification to it, in the early 1980s. I'm going to say 1983, I'm thinking, when the tops of the barrels, those were removed. And then it became very much like the Witch's Cauldron, except for those weren't on didn't tilt up and everything. But it occurred at that time. And, it was one of the different, evolutions of the ride during the years that it was there. But I didn't like it after they did that because it was too similar to the other ride that you talked about.
Why did they do that?
I don't know. I really don't know. It didn't make any sense to me. I think it kind of lost that barrel effect a little bit the way that it looked when it first opened.
I wonder if I'm seeing two possibilities. Either one, it was like they were kind of getting damaged and they just opted to do that instead of replacing all or most of them. Or two, there was some sort of line of sight thing with the operators with the tops, and that's why they took them off. It's going to be one of those two. I don't think it was an aesthetic decision. But the ride lasted until 1989, in which it was removed and it was replaced by everybody's favorite, a new airbrush shop.
Yeah, I got quite a few shirts from that over the years. When I was doing different things there at the park, and that airbrush shop's still there. Still thriving, still doing well. But I can't help walk right by that. Whenever I'm in the park, looking over there, I just remember what was there, and that was my first Kings Island experience.
Yeah, and it kind of embodied the whole German theme of Oktoberfest and so on. So um, that's a shame. But the legacy lives on, as I mentioned in the Brady Bunch episode, The Cincinnati Kids, where it played a role in the storyline involving Alice on the platform searching for the plans.
Yep, that's one of the iconic scenes in that episode. And, again, every time I watch that episode, I still think back again, hey, the barrels, my first ride at Kings Island. So a lot of memories come flooding back anytime I watch that episode.
Absolutely. So As an integral part of Kings Island history, Deer Spin Keggers left an indelible mark on the amusement park experience, which is absolutely true. So when you say it tilted, Don, did it start at a tilt or did it raise?
No, it started, like, it would move, like, and go in a circle, and you could spin your barrels and that kind of thing, and then the floor would kind of tilt up. And, if you hadn't ridden it before, you weren't paying attention while you were, in line to ride it, that would catch a lot of riders by surprise because they weren't expecting that to happen.
Did it like pop up in the air or did it just go up and stay there?
Just kind of gradually went up a little bit. Yeah. So it just kind of elevated. That was one of the things, this past year when they added Cargo Loco.
Hmm.
So kind of a barrel type ride, similar experience. But the platform didn't rise up. And that was one of the things that longtime Kings Island guests, noticed. They were hoping it would do the same thing as their Spinning Keggers, but, it doesn't. But there's also not really a comparison between the two. So I think the idea is the same, but just two totally different ride experiences.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think it's most flat rides spin you somehow, and I guess the biggest comparison, and this is very loose, is that tip top ride at Stricker's Grove, but that kind of like pops you in the air. So it's
Mhm.
like an airtime moment, but that's what I kinda had in mind when you mentioned that that it tilts, but, so how did
Now it's a lunch loser, right? Yeah, lunch loser ride. I'll give it that word too, because when you really got it going, and that, especially we had the place that served the German food there. That's Enrique's now. And people would eat their, the Mets and the brats and the sauerkraut and all that kind of stuff, and then they get on that thing. Was not a good time for some riders if you were in the same barrel with
they
them.
eat their schnitzels, then they puke their schnitzel. I actually one of my distinct memories about the witch's cauldron was we were about to get into one of the cauldrons, and we had to pick another one because there was puke in the one that we did, but, yeah, so, modifications to the ride and stuff, do you know why the ride was removed? Was it an end of service life thing or, you know
Yeah, it was kind of like that, where it had kind of, reached the end. It had been there since '72, so pretty long run at that point in time for it. Um, they had the Witch's Cauldron, so a similar type ride experience as noted there. So yeah, it was just time to make way for the airbrush stand.
Well, I mean, we didn't have enough airbrush stands at the time in their defense. Now,
Now back then though too, Ryan, it was a different world we lived in, that you didn't always know that these rides were, going to be going away, and you would come the next year and they weren't there anymore. I was always able to, find out because of what I was doing with the racer, and had a good relationship with everybody, at the park, the marketing team, and all that, and they would, kind of let me know, hey, if you want to, get your final rides, and we're not going to bring it back next year, just don't tell anybody. So I was able to get, rides on the final day of operation for it, knowing it wasn't going to come back. But there were so many surprise guests, 1990 opening weekend, and they, run down toward the racer, and hey, wait a minute, airbrush shop, where's the barrels? So there was a lot of surprise there that it hadn't been announced that the ride wasn't coming back.
if I was the manager of the airbrush shop, the number one T-shirt I would have in the window was "Deer Spin Keggers was here," kind of like the graffiti thing because it would be accurate.
Oh yeah. And they could probably sell those kind of shirts, if they made some up for people. I think people would like the nostalgia always plays. So why not
Yeah,
get an airbrush shirt of they're spinning keggers, right?
yeah, absolutely. But so that played into what it's kind of lost now, but there was a pretty big German themed area in the park, Oktoberfest. There's a section that's called Oktoberfest now. And it loosely has a German theme to it, but it was far more extensive at the time, right?
Oh yeah, you had the barrels, you had the restaurant there, um, you had the wooden shoes, you had that ride. Bayern Curve, was there. Um, you had the rotor in that area. So you had so many different rides there. I'm missing, one I'm thinking of. So I said Bayern Curve. Oh, Bavarian Beetle,
Yeah.
was right there. So, yeah, and then Viking Fury came in, when it opened up there in the early '80s. So at one time, there were a lot of rides. It was kind of like a hub, of these family flat rides.
Yeah, and you mentioned wooden shoes. I think the actual name was it Flying Dutchman?
Flying
Flying
Dutchman, yeah,
Dutchman, which can now be ridden at Kentucky Kingdom, which the unique thing about that ride, and we'll probably do an episode on that ride, is that the shoes, like, land on the ground. They,
yeah,
like, completely land on the
little
ground.
bou- a little bounce you get, yeah.
So
I love that ride, didn't you?
Yeah, I didn't ride it until Kentucky Kingdom, but absolutely, it's really fun. So, spinning ride, you're sitting in a shoe, it spins, it's like every other flat ride essentially,
Yeah.
but,
Yep.
yeah, when it comes down, it slows down kinda like the Zephyr does and just plops itself right on the ground, which I guess makes it almost a little bit safer as far as entering and exiting, but you think
Yeah,
that
and then
would
you had the
be
tumble bu yeah, you had the tumble bug right there where Soul Spin is now, so, I mean, it was just a hopping place, for those family flat rides back in the '70s and the '80s, and then, they started going away in the '90s and, to what you see now where there's not a whole lot of it. I am excited that they brought some flat rides back to that area with Soul Spin and Cargo Loco, but not under the Oktoberfest umbrella in that area now called Adventure Port. So, yeah, very little remains of Oktoberfest. And we'll have to do an episode just on Oktoberfest sometime because we're talking about these different rides there and stuff, but we can go into much more detail.
Yeah, we'll have to go into, like, the rise and fall of Oktoberfest, because I don't think Oktoberfest would fly nowadays, because I don't think the people of Cincinnati identify with their German heritage the way that they did 50 years ago.
Oh, no, no,
I
not at
I
all.
don't think that people, and I don't even think it's Cincinnati, I think it's everywhere, because obviously there's Oktoberfest downtown and, yeah, all sorts of stuff like that, but I think generally speaking, like, I don't think of myself as being of German heritage. My family's been in America for 200 years. I think of myself as American, so, so it's weird to identify with that, but that's neither here nor there. That's something that we can litigate in a future episode, but alright, so let's move on to our listener question. This is from Elijah Maccabee. He asks, "What non-ride attraction would you like to see at KI? For example, a fun house like Noah's Ark or Old Town Hall Museum like at Cedar Point?" Don, I'll let you take that. What non-ride would
Oh,
you like to
gosh, the
see?
great, great question. Um, I would go with something like Cedar Point has. I think that would fit and work there. What are your thoughts? To me, so yes, what Cedar Point has, I think I would lean toward that.
What Cedar Point has as in like a town hall or
Yeah, town hall type of
yeah,
thing.
that hasn't been open for a while, but I do like it. I don't know what their plan is with it. I feel like they've kind of teased that they have an idea, but I think it's important to preserve park history, especially now that Kings Island's more than 50 years old. I think that some sort of museum would be
Yes.
really cool, and the fact that they have it like themed like a town hall at Cedar Point, I think is really really neat. Um, but
Now you have the Tower Gardens that they did for the 50th anniversary, and that was back last year. So you have that, but that's I mean it's still not a museum in terms of having the different artifacts
right,
and being able to show. Like when we were at Entertainment Junction and we saw the Coney Island section, and they had the video playing. Kind of walking you through the history, just different things like that. So I think you've been there 50 plus years, you've got great history, a lot of nostalgia. A lot of people grew up, going to the park. A lot of people work there, have great memories of it. So I think something like a museum, that would be, to me, a home run. I think, you hear that a lot, people asking, why isn't there a museum? So yeah, I think I would lean to something like that
yeah,
too.
and now I wouldn't discredit the other ones. A fun house would be really cool, like is it Hoos that makes the, like, the spinning room thing that they have, in a
Hmm.
couple different places around, especially other countries, and then Noah's Ark is not made anymore, that's PTC. Did you go through Noah's Ark when you were at Kennywood last time?
Yes.
Noah's
Yeah,
Ark might
absolutely
be my
love that.
favorite attraction at Kennywood, but, okay, first of all, they couldn't build Noah's Ark the way that they did. I think that the one at Kennywood's the last operating one. I think, like, the one in England is there, but it doesn't rock and you can't go through it or anything. Um, that would be really cool though, if they could build something that's tantamount to it that, I mean, I guess would meet today's like ADA standards and stuff because Noah's Ark at Kennywood certainly doesn't. But um, that would be really fun too. Like, just a different idea, a walkthrough attraction or something. That's something that Kings Island doesn't have that I think would be really fun. But yeah, you're right. If I had to choose between them, I would probably say a museum. But when we had to choose, it's just like the Phantom Theater line that I give. If it's going to be done, I want it to be done right. So if I had to choose between a Noah's Ark and a museum that's like a 10-foot fixture window, then I wanna go with Noah's Ark, but if it's like,
Yeah.
we're gonna build this building, it's gonna have exhibits, it's gonna have videos, it's gonna teach you about the history of the park, like, it's hard to turn that down.
Yeah, that would be hard to turn down, but you're right. It has to be done right or don't do it.
Yeah, that's how it is with Phantom Theater too. But yeah, cool. Very good question. Thank you, Elijah, so much. Hey, dear Spin Keggers, everybody. I'm Ryan Sir along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.